In this video, I'm going to show you what it takes for developers to come up with designs with their architects that actually get built. In this particular scenario, we had a vacant parking lot that we were looking to convert into residential housing. And it was pretty challenging because we had to deal with the historic neighboring properties. On one side, we had buildings that were built in 1810, and on the other side, we had projects that were built around 1830. This is a historic neighborhood. It's on the National Registry of Historic Places. We have to go by historic guidelines when we're getting approvals. Now, what we need to do is think about the profiles of the neighboring buildings. We don't want to mimic the neighboring buildings so they look identical, because when you're walking or driving down the block, the entire streetscape tells a story of when things were built. You don't want to mimic the other buildings, because if you did, it would look like everything was built the same period, which is not true. So at any rate, we went to the architect, and a good architect will know all those rules. We asked him for a few designs, a few concepts that we could consider, and that we would also think that the neighborhood would like and the city would like, so that we can get approved. So he presented us with two concepts. In this first concept, you could see that it looks like a few different buildings. To the right, there's a building with red brick, which blends in to the rest of the block on the right, which is brownstones, and they kind of have the same profile as the new building that's being built. And then as you get to the left, there's this white looking house that blends into the smaller houses to the left. And in between, he has this like modern structure that kind of carries the profile of all the buildings to the right. Pretty cool design. Here it is at a different angle. And you could see how this blends into the block. To be honest, we weren't really crazy about this design. It kind of looks like there's all these different materials. It's also very difficult to build something like this, because when you are dealing with many different materials, you have to hire various trades to make that work. And it causes a lot of delays because you have to go in between all these subcontractors that you have to deal with. So we asked them for another design, and they came up with concept number 2, which we thought was pretty cool. So this here carries the profile all the way through, but it's very modern. And as you could see, it goes from a flat facade with many panels on the windows. And then as it carries over to the left, where those smaller historic buildings are, it curves out over the sidewalk, which we thought was very interesting. We hadn't seen anything of this nature in a historic neighborhood, and he just gave us a few different colors before we picked the brick that we thought was appropriate for this building. And this is what we ended up with. As you can see, this is a really cool look. Here it is at a different angle. Here you can really see how the curve of the building projects out into the sidewalk. We thought we could really do well presenting this to the neighborhood in the city, and people would get excited about it. So we really love this design, and we presented this to the city and to the neighborhood, and unfortunately they didn't like it. They didn't like it for a number of reasons. Number one, they felt that it was too ahead of its time. We disagree with that, but they felt that way. And on top of that, the problem was that the property was formerly a parking lot, and the neighbors were complaining that we were taking away their parking. So we had to go back to the drawing board and figure out a way where we can incorporate parking back into this building and have both parking with residential housing. The issue with parking in this zone is that you're not supposed to have parking in a historic neighborhood. And we had a battle between the city and us not wanting parking in the building, and a neighborhood that wanted to preserve their parking. We had to create a balance to allow the project to be feasible. So now we really had to start from scratch and think about how to get parking into this building. The negative thing about that is that we lose an entire floor of residential housing due to parking. Before we thought about building this building, there were 32 parking spaces. And now we had to try to bring back about 32 parking spaces, which we knew was impossible because the floor area was going to be taken by stairwells and elevator shafts, foundation walls, and things like that. So we knew we would lose some parking, but we would gain a few parking spots for the building and the neighboring houses as well. So the architect went back to the drawing board and started to think about what this building may look like with parking, and also not make it look too ahead of its time. So he gave us a quick concept that looks like the neighboring buildings to the right, and at the same time he added an additional story above it that is very modern. As this drawing evolves, he gets into the details and shows us what it may look like. Now, this design was pretty good because we were able to get parking and also have the same amount of housing above the parking. But the problem is that the city, when we presented this to them, they didn't like it because we couldn't surpass the height of the neighboring historic buildings. Now, according to the zoning and the historic guidelines, we weren't able to build higher than the historic building. So we had to go back and do something about the height of the building. And this was the final design that we came up with. We thought this was a very good looking design. It's not as modern as we would have liked, and it's not as big as we wanted it to be to make the numbers feasible, but it was still a profitable project, and we decided to move forward with this design. And at the end of the day, this is what actually got built. This photo looks exactly like the rendering in the previous slide. We ended up with 12 residential units, 6 one-bedroom apartments, 6 two-bedroom apartments, above 20 parking spaces. This was the design that everyone was happy with. The city, us, and the neighborhood. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Got questions or thoughts? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you next time.